Okay, well, good morning. And today is one more session of Grandma's March. And today, actually, I'm in Miami in my nephew's house or my sister's house. So that's why I have a different setting up today. And we have a very special guest today, which is Karen Buckley. And thank you, Karen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited because, the amazing thing of this event and all this work that I'm doing is the connections that am building and the way we got connected. I know it was through Christine and Vic. I assume through the WIG conference. You probably saw something about the event. You sent me a beautiful message, and I say, oh my God, I love it, and everybody's welcome to be in this space that if they want to have a story, or if they have a story, or they have a beautiful connection, and it happens that you are also a grandma, and the beautiful work that you do in the world is so connected to this, that that's why we're here today. So, but before we go, so you can share us all your beautiful story and journey, I just want to introduce you. And Karen, she's an executive coach and consultant to leaders and organizations, and she brings all that expertise and experience to the professional or organizational development through her company, which is Community Core Consulting. And at the end, we always put everything about the website, and I will ask you where people can find you. And all your clients develop wise leadership. And that's the idea through the work that you do. And you can tell us a little bit more about that skills, strategies, and presence to cultivate committed performance and drive the change. Karen is also a published author, experienced speaker, and convenes women leadership in retreats, which that sounds amazing. And that's another thing I know you can tell us about a retreat that is coming up, and I'm gonna join, which I'm so excited about this. And beautiful that you work all the feminine wisdom, the power, and the leadership for a more sustainable and healthy and loving world. And there is a passion about you also about education. So also I know you co-founded the Greenwood School, which is an innovative Waldorf elementary school, which that sounds amazing as well. And you can tell us more. And I know a beautiful family that you have two adult children with their mates and your husband and a fluffy dog that you have, and you are rooted in California. So, you have been living there for more than 25 years, and you love gardening and enjoy friends and hiking. So, wow, we're here with an amazing woman that I'm curious to hear your story. And the idea is that you start sharing with us a little bit about that story. Who are you? And the question that I always do is, what is the connection that you had and any memories with the grandmothers, with your grandmothers, or even a grandma that you had? So welcome.
Oh, thank you, Monica. I love this conversation about the grandmothers.
It's so
It means
delightful.
so much to me. I think that's what intrigued me when I saw the connection that you had with, excuse me, with Kristen Envig of the Women's International Networking. I've
Yes.
spoken at a couple of her conferences over the years, and she just recently spoke. I hosted a couple Humanity Rising sessions, and
Mm.
Kristen was part of one of them. And so she and I have maintained connection over the years, and I just love that you're asking the question about our grandmothers and what is the role of the grandmothers at this time. And I thought that was such an important question that I did want to acknowledge the conversation.
Mm.
So thank you for this.
Wow.
My grandmother was Mom,
Oh,
so
wow.
we called her Mom, and she was very, very important to me. Her first name was Fern,
Okay.
and Fern is my middle name. It's my
Oh,
mother's middle
wow.
name, and it's my daughter's middle name.
Oh, wow.
So, it's, and it really represents to me who she was. My grandfather and grandmother had a beautiful piece of land in Seattle, just outside of Seattle.
Hmm.
And my grandmother when I was a child growing up, there were two sides to her. One was the side that was always working in the kitchen. She had a wood burning stove. It was nothing fancy. You know, we put wood in and then it burned, you know, and then the burners heated up and everything, and the oven heated up. And and she was always, I mean, they had this big garden and everything, and cows and chickens and a big barn. And so it was really, it was the place where, as a child, where we went every holiday, and it nourished my soul so much. We moved a lot. When I was a child, we moved every year or two because my dad was in the hotel business. And so really my grandmother's home was my anchor. That was really my place where I found myself. And when I was very young, I was 2, I went and lived with my grandmother for a few months while my mom was having difficulty with the pregnancy with my sister. So some of what I learned from Mom, she was steadfast, and she was insistent. She was determined. She was also enormously warm. Didn't necessarily, not a warm, cuddly kind of warm. She didn't have that in her background or in her temperament even. But there was a way that I always felt enveloped and held by her presence, in her presence. And I said earlier that there were 2 sides to her.
Yeah.
And I described one, the part of her that was in the kitchen all the time and working the fields and collecting the eggs and plucking the rooster, you know, plucking the chickens after my grandfather would kill them and all of that. And then there's this other side of her. She was the first woman in her area to drive a car.
Oh, wow.
And there's a great picture of her driving a car when she's in her early 20s. And, you know, that was a long time before. And very few women did that. She had a lot of independence in her. She wrote a column for the local newspaper, the Normandy Park newspaper. And, you know, back in those days as a woman, the only thing you could write about was the social column.
Yeah,
made it interesting. You know, she made it beyond just who was getting married and who was dying, although she covered that. She had more interesting themes woven throughout. And she was very influential in Normandy Park becoming a city and not just being part of Burien. So, you know, there were several things that she did like that were very strong and very clear in the way that she made choices. The other thing I learned from her, though, is the cost of depriving yourself.
Okay.
Because she gave and gave and gave. And she didn't ask for or demand much. So instead of support hose, which she needed because she had really bad varicose veins, she had ace bandages wrapped around her legs.
Wow.
You know, and her legs were killing her. And she walked a mile each way to take food to her sister, who was an invalid. Not an invalid, I'm sorry. Her sister chose to stay home.
Okay, yeah.
She was not an invalid. She could have gone out.
Got it.
And at some point, she just simply chose to be a hermit.
God.
And my grandmother took care of her.
Yeah.
And it was very gracious of her and very generous of her. And at the same time, as I grew up, the story was, this is what love looks like.
Yeah.
This kind of self-sacrifice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I, from very young, I could see both the generosity in her movement, in her giving, and the lie in it, or the part of it that didn't make sense, the part of it that was hurting her. But one other really fond memory to finish this portion is I was probably 18 or 19, and I went back to visit her on my own. And I had on, God only knows why, but I had on like these army surplus baggy green pants and,
Okay.
and a work shirt. And I think that it was in my heavy duty feminist phase. And I was really, I'm not going to wear makeup. I'm not going to do my hair. And you're going to need to see me as the
Like
strong
this.
woman that I am. And I got, but I remember making applesauce bread with her. Now, my grandmother wouldn't just buy jars of applesauce at the grocery store, right? They would go out, we would pick the apples, we would haul the apples into
Oh,
the
amazing.
house, we would peel the apples and cut the apples and cook the apples. And then we would take the apples and we'd put a big bunch of lard in the bottom of a bowl. And then we would take the hot applesauce and put it in and melt the lard. And then we would make up the applesauce.
Delicious.
And I still make it today, but without
Oh,
the lard,
wow.
without picking all the apples.
Okay.
I have pictures of my applesauce bread, and I still have her bowl actually. But I remember I was beating it vigorously, and she said, the bread won't rise if you do that. And she showed me what it was to take and turn the dough and turn it so that the ingredients were mixed without breaking it up, without beating it. And I can still remember that subtlety of that, the way her hands knew so much in that gesture. You know, they were hands of wisdom.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I can feel it. It's like, yeah, and it's something you can take even to life, you know, like how things you can do it in a so much gentle, kind way, and doesn't need to be like stirring up everything. So beautiful.
Yeah.
I love these stories, and I was also wondering, Karen, like, how do you think in the amazing work that you do today that I want you to share with all of us, how do you think they inspire you? Because I can start understanding how they know how she inspire you in that journey or the woman leader that you are today. So tell us about a little bit about that work that you do, and is there a connection of through all that, you know, and the leader, the woman that you are, and the work that you do today?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you. Absolutely. I think there's two sides again. I guess I'm in a two-sided mood this morning. One
We
side,
are two-sided as well.
one side is the very strong woman that my grandmother was, and that my mother was as well. And so early on, as I began to work with organizations and help them develop their leaders and their strategic plans and who they could become as a team so that the work that they're doing can be fully expressed in the world and really have impact and make a difference, and they can work together rather than being in conflict. And a lot of that tenacity that I have and the willingness to keep showing up even in difficult situations and really standing with both women and men as they come into their wisdom, as they learn to trust their wisdom and the core commitment of what matters in their heart. That strength of determination, and strength of my own commitment to their potential and to what is possible for them in the world, and really seeing that manifest not only for themselves, but through their teams and through their organizations. That is certainly part of what I received from my grandmother and my mother. On the other side of it is very much an appreciation of beauty and the depth of the spirit, of the human spirit. And so a good portion of my work is also finding silence together, and out of that silence, listening to what wants to emerge, listening to the emergent wisdom that's below what we know, and let us stretch into the edges of what there is to be known, what there is to know, what what organizational structure will actually work for this next phase.
Mm-hmm.
What leadership capacities are blossoming inside of someone that aren't yet known, that aren't yet understood or brought forward in a full way. I pay a lot of attention to the voice, and to have people found their voice, and does their voice bring forward the depth of their care and their commitment. So I've been doing this work with organizations and leaders since 1980.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And at the same time, so I've worked with all kinds of different systems, from nonprofits and spiritual communities all the way to Fortune 500 companies and government agencies, and so I've run a lot of meetings. I've sat in on a lot of meetings, helping things happen. I've worked with a lot of different leaders. I've learned about a lot of different professions, and all of that to me keeps coming back to, is what we're doing about sustaining the world? Or is what we're doing depleting the world?
Wow.
And that to me is what feminine wisdom brings. The feminine wisdom in both men and women is we pay attention to life. We pay attention to our actions and to our ways of being and to our attitudes. Are we generative? Is there a reciprocal flow rather than a one-sided taking or giving? Either side is depleting.
Wow. And that is so needed right now in the world. Well, I also work in the corporate world, and it's so needed that these leaders that are, and not only in corporate world, in all systems like you're saying, we need leaders more connected to that, to their true essence or their hearts, and really help us build a better world and more human world, because at the end, sometimes we can choose our leaders, sometimes not, and we depend on them to build those systems. And your role is just amazing, because you're helping to build that, and especially that leadership and influence those systems that we need something new. But I'm curious here to understand how did you start that journey? Why would you went into that? If you want to share with us, like how did all start? Like back then, how come you started doing that?
Why did I go into organization?
Yeah.
The universe often places me where I'm supposed to be. So, there is a logical progression, but I was originally educated, my original bachelor's degree is in education.
Okay.
Which is why I had such a passion about co-founding the Greenwood School.
Got it. Okay.
Took the best of Waldorf education and blended it with a nature-based curriculum, a spiritual curriculum, and a gender-balanced curriculum. So we took and brought those elements together and created a really remarkable school. And so that's my original background.
Okay.
I left college and just took a summer job in a business. Just to earn some money during the summer. And I had worked in my dad's big hotels throughout high school. I'd always worked every summer throughout high school and college and put myself through college. So when I got a job in a small retail store, I had already understood business. Well, it turns out that the owner was a Tibetan Buddhist. He had just opened the store. I was his second hire, and he was a Tibetan Buddhist who had made and lost millions, and in the past. And so he taught me how to integrate spirit and business, meditation and business, consciousness and business. So here I was thinking I was going off to teach, and instead I was going into business. This was in my early 20s, and I was traveling to the boutique shows. It was a clothing store and shoe store. And we were bringing some of the most phenomenal brands, the early Esprit and Sweet Baby Jane and Stuart Boots, and some of these really fine, beautiful clothes that were out here in California, but they weren't yet in Colorado. And I came to love business. And so when I moved from Colorado to California, I took a job in another business here just as a temporary kind of stopgap thing, and ended up taking a career development seminar, and just so that I could get some help figuring out what I wanted to do next. And she ended up hiring me because she was in the middle of writing a PhD on organization development.
Oh, wow.
So I knew nothing about OD at that point.
Okay.
She was writing this PhD. So I ran her business for several years, delivering the trainings and enrolling people and running the operations side of the business and the workshop side of the business. And she took me to a meeting where Michael Doyle was facilitating. It was the Archdiocese of San Francisco. And Randy Riley, my boss, her brother was in the Archdiocese, and she thought I might be interested in this meeting. And I watched Michael Doyle run that meeting, and I said, I understand what he's doing. What is this? I'm going to go do this.
I want to do this. I love it.
I want to do this. I know how to do this. And so I went and started taking trainings and immediately became an associate for Interaction Associates. And really, then Beth Schwabell in my church said, Karen, would you come facilitate this meeting for us? And it just really grew from person to person. And pretty soon I was consulting with Santa Clara County. Before it was Silicon Valley, it was Santa Clara County. Sally Reed was the county exec then, and I was her primary consultant for many years, and with San Mateo County, and then worked with the EPA, and at the same time was doing some work with corporations, Realm and others that were all the companies that existed around there at that time. And simultaneously, so there was this organization development and doing what might look like very traditional work, but knowing that I was infusing it with these other values and with spirit, I was always simultaneously in projects that had to do with consciousness and business. So conscious leadership has always been a passion of mine. Again, 1980 was my first facilitation training in clients. 1980, I was also in a project on holistic governance and another project on organization alignment. So I've always had those two working hand in hand all the way through. Yeah, so I can't imagine that we could have one without the other.
Yeah.
They really go completely together for me.
What an amazing journey. And like you say, life put us sometimes, well, I think in the right place, right? It's like,
I think so too. As long as we listen.
Right.
As long as we listen, and as long as we say yes. I've learned throughout my life the importance of saying yes.
Yes.
When the universe is asking, the importance of saying yes.
Oh, how beautiful. And I love it. And it's like those two parts of the education, because I think that is so needed also and so beautiful. And today, especially with the kids and bringing all that more holistic education, which I love, but at the same time, you're bringing that into the organizations and systems. And that is so delightful and so beautiful what you're doing. And how do you think we can create the new world, or let's not call it the new world, but how can we really design or create something new, getting in touch with all this feminine wisdom, and I'm always curious because all this ancestral feminine wisdom, there is something very special in it that I'm even learning every day more, that I connect to someone like you or everybody that has been part of this event. And there is something very special in there that, well, maybe if we touch in that, we can create something, a better world. That's what we need at the end.
It is what we need. It is. And immediately.
Yes. Yeah. We cannot wait too much. Yes.
We cannot wait at all.
Yeah.
Every action we take today, tomorrow, the next day must be towards creating a regenerative cycles in our world rather than depletion cycles. It's that time. There's two parts to that. One is, this is why I two parts again. This is why I host the women's retreats. So I for many years have hosted women's retreats in Switzerland, in Mexico, and for the last 8 years in Hawaii. And now with the pandemic,
Right.
we've gone online, which actually has been a marvelous opportunity for women all over the world to participate. The conversation last year was about the power and gifts of love.
Mm.
And how do we know love in ourselves as a place to come from, a way of being? When we know love and we rest in love, what difference does it make in the connections that we have in life, the work that we do, the way we know ourselves, the way we can set aside the inner critic and welcome the encouraging voice inside ourselves. Excuse me. And this year we are leading a retreat called The Courage of the Heart, because it's time for courage. And that courage needs to be connected with the heart, because if it's not, if we're disconnected from our heart and we're into courage, we go off into the battlefield or something, we're always repeating cycles of violence and cycles of separation from the earth and from each other. And as we do that, we're not honoring that which we're here to offer and really here to do. And the courage to listen to what is ours to do. The courage to take action. We say as part of the training that love, courage is love in action. So how about if we're acting from love, rather than feeling love or yearning for love or wanting love or fighting with love or all of the rest of the things we do with love. If we know love as a ground of being inside of ourselves, a place that we share automatically, a place that of great strength, a place where our best practices come from, our best self comes from. And we take that love and we take that into action. We take that into everything we do. I know for myself, it makes all the difference. And it's so easy to forget. It's easy to get into my doing mode, It's easy to get into getting stuff done or moving through that or getting this organized or getting that plan developed or working with the client and achieving those results and disconnecting from why it really matters. Disconnecting from the heart. And we don't have time any longer to do that disconnection.
No.
It's just not, it's not an option. Our world will not continue unless as a viable place for humans and other life. I believe the earth will continue. The earth has regenerative cycles that are constantly going and will continue to go once it's no longer habitable for us.
Yeah.
We have, excuse me, we have, if I may tell the story about how I came to discover feminine wisdom.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So I was a feminist in that I loved men and so it's not like against men as much as it's pro women.
Yeah, right. You wanted more for women. Yes, we all want that. Yeah.
I mean, I can remember as a teenager a young teenager, I was probably 14, sitting at my parents' table for a dinner when they had some guests over. And I remember the conversation was about politics and the men were all opining on the politics, the local politics. And one of the women I can remember vividly had her arm on the table and she leaned forward and she spoke very clearly into a moment of pause. And she had to really insert herself in, but she spoke very clearly and cogently about this upcoming election and something else that she thought was important to consider. And I can remember so vividly that her husband reached his hand over and patted her hand.
Oh my
And one of
God.
the other men laughed. And the third man went ahead and just started talking again, as if she hadn't said anything.
Mm. Ignoring her. Yeah.
As a young, dismissing her. It's
Of
beyond
course,
ignoring.
even worse. You're
It's
right.
even worse. It's dismissing.
Oh my God.
And that kind of incident shaped me to make sure that women have their voice.
Yes.
And that the context in which we're bringing our voice, if we need to be able to fighting our way into it, then great, let's have the skills for doing that fight and doing it well. But increasingly, let's set up the context where all the voices are welcome.
Mm.
And where we're really listening to the nuances of the different perspectives and the different ways of understanding. And when I was to go forward now a whole bunch of years, I was on the board of Spirit and Business Global Institute, and
Oh, wow.
marvelous, marvelous human beings that were on the board, and they all meditated with the Dalai Lama, and they were just these incredible, incredible beings, and men and another woman. And when the program committee, we were putting on a next conference, and when the program committee came in for came in with a suggested program for the next year's conference, and it was 85% men. And this was in 2003.
Wow.
Something in me, I was astonished, I was amazed, and then I was so sad.
I know
so
what's happening.
sad.
Yeah.
And I genuinely asked them from the core of that sadness, how can it be that you would have 85% men on this program when we're speaking about wisdom and spirit, and when we're speaking about spirit and business?
I know.
And they said there weren't enough qualified women.
Why? I wonder why.
Exactly what I wondered. Exactly, Monica. I said, I wonder why they can't see
Right.
qualified women that are there. What are the blinders? What are the frameworks
Yes.
that we hold as a culture? Because I have to include myself, because had I seen clearly, I would have already been bringing names forward. I would have been proactive in it.
Right.
What is this part of us? What is it we don't see? So that's the, what do we not know that we don't know, right?
Yes.
What is it that we don't see? Well, what we don't see is the wisdom that women bring. And I began to recognize and look at, we have potentially here what we might think of as the wisdom of men and the wisdom of women. And I thought, well, that's not quite accurate, because of course there's women and men that seem to cross that boundary very easily and have both. And I certainly do. And I thought it's really, and so I began to look up wisdom in the dictionary. And a wise man is a discreet and prudent man, well versed in the affairs of the world. We can see many, many examples throughout literature of wise men and why they've been touted as wise men.
Yes.
And when I couldn't find a definition for wise woman, looking in my daughter's high school dictionary, looking in.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Another dictionary I had on my bookshelf here. I went to the library and looked in the dictionary. And my husband had bought me the Oxford English Historical Dictionary. And I opened it up, and it said that we were out in the woods making charms and other beneficent things. That's what a wise woman is. We're out in the woods and we're making charms.
Like a witch or something.
Right. And
that's incredible.
the thought immediately was, of course, who are the conference programmers going to call to speak? The wise and prudent man, well versed in the affairs of the world when we're trying to integrate spirit and business. You're
Right.
not going to call the women who are out in the woods making
Making
charm,
charms. Right.
right? You might call them over here. Could you do a little to help make this conference magical? But they're not going to be your center pole.
No.
They're not going to be the fountain from which the information comes that is most vital for the continuation of life on this earth. And I recognized, if you're a corporate executive and your company needs a new hire, who are you going to call?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you going to call?
Hmm.
So at that moment, that was a turning point for me, where I moved from the strength of being a feminist and making sure that women were equal and had equal opportunity, to actually recognizing the essential nature of feminine wisdom in all of us, in both women and men. Because I've spoken to audiences now about feminine wisdom, and I can remember very vividly, it was in San Francisco, it was the employee assistance professionals, it was their local meeting here. It was an audience of, I don't know, 50 or 60 people. And in the very front row, there were the board and some of the committees. And and I was telling stories about women and feminine wisdom, and how important it is that we acknowledge this wise part of us that pays attention to the textures and the beauty and the longevity of life and the generations to come, and the connections between us. And I can remember so vividly the man in the front row who had tears in his eyes. And he said, "It's why I do the work I do." He said, "That's a part of me that needs to be honored. And the way that our corporations are run, I have to hide that. I have to hide how much I care." So his work was being an employee assistance professional. That's helping people through alcohol issues, through family issues, through work issues. I mean, this man had a huge feminine wisdom.
Right. And that's hidden, like.
And he didn't have the space to bring it forward
Right.
in the corporate structures that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So what is my dream that I have for my grandchildren?
Yes.
For my children,
Yes.
really, for my daughter and my son, for my, and my daughter-in-law and my son-in-law, and all of the children of the world, is that we recognize the essential gifts of feminine wisdom as well as masculine wisdom, that we bring those together. And that's why on April 24th, we have our next women's retreat. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you can join us. And I hope that many other women will be coming in. We have just such an incredible group already, and of women who are really challenging their own assumptions around love and their heart, and what it means to speak from the heart, what it means to live your life from your heart, what it means to connect your heart with your courage.
I really want to thank you for all that, sharing that wisdom. And really, because sometimes we women, we even are so disconnected that we think the way is just being feminist and work for equality, which I also do that, and we should keep doing it. But there is something more profound and deeper that we need to bring back, and it's that connection to the feminine wisdom, and for just women and men, because we got disconnected, and because the system just, there is no space, like you said, there is no space for that for women and men. It's just like, okay, we have to be tough, we have to go, be productive, but where is the love, where is the caring, where is that human side that we all forgot? And through this amazing work you're doing, you help us remember, especially as women, because through us, we can bring more of that into the system, into organizations, into education, to everywhere, into our families. And especially this month that we're celebrating, women, but also grandmothers through this event. And now that you're a grandma, that is so special because you said that I want to bring this and I want to, do it for my grandchildren, for my children and the generations to come. So
Absolutely,
uh,
absolutely. Holding my grandson soon after he was born, and just knowing that I will do absolutely everything it takes for him
really,
to be able to contribute his gifts and to bring his soul forward in really productive ways. So let's have it come together, let's just really have the unfolding of the soul and the capacities of the heart be completely linked with creating magnificent results in the world, and opening doors for people, coming up with new inventions, um, uh, running systems that really provide amazing services for people, from phenomenal construction and engineering to social services to, I can just go all the way around to the people who have heart and integrate that with the work. That's really what we're about. It's the spirit and business.
yes,
It's love and business. I'm in the midst of doing
yes,
some writing on love and business right now. And
yes,
it's really the integration of love and business that we're
yes.
called to at this time.
Mm, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And I think one of the ways of getting in touch with that love for all of us, and there is something universal about the grandmothers and that lineage of our feminine wisdom, where it comes from, and our mothers and our grandmothers, and a lot comes from there. And so it's so special that you have that role today, being a grandma. But a lot of us, even with not grandmas, we can, get in touch with that and bring that love into our community, our society, and the organization. So thank you, Karen, again. This has been like the most amazing conversation. I learned so much from you, and I'm looking so much forward for that retreat. So share with us, where can people find you? Like, where can we find about the retreat and all the amazing work that you do? So yeah, it's so important we spread all that out there.
Thank you. Yes, my consulting website is Communicore, COMMUNICORE consulting.com. So communicoreconsulting.com. And the wisdom retreat is there
Okay.
under the services we provide, as well as there's a page that describes some of the individual executive coaching that I do, because I work with individual women and men who are outside of an organizational system, as well as working with, most of my work is with long-term retainer clients. They bring me in and I work with their team. I work with the key leaders on a regular ongoing basis, whether they're going through a leadership succession or they're simply developing the most extraordinary culture and team and capacities over many years. My longest term client is 28 years at this point, and
Wow.
uh, so running their senior management retreats every year and developing leaders as they come into the system. So the retreat, we'd love to have you join us. It is for women only, but we are looking at doing one for men and women. So if it's something that you're interested in and you're a guy or you know a guy that would be interested, do shoot me. There's a contact us on that retreat page or all the way through the website. And we'd love to know, because we're actually have a couple requests. And so we're thinking, well, maybe
Yeah.
next month or something, we might offer something that would be for men and women. It might be really fun to see a difference. Although the community of women that gathers each time is very special.
Oh, I
So
imagine. Can't wait to be part
an
of that.
incredible opportunity for women to just dive down in together and really have that
That's
time to flourish in each other's presence, to really listen each other into our beauty and our greatness.
mm, mm. How delightful. I love it. I can't wait to be part of that. And for sure, men out there that they are so connected to this, but they don't have spaces. This is a space, amazing space that you can create. So amazing. I want to really thank you for your time. for sharing all your experiences, your wisdom with us. What an amazing story. What an amazing work you're doing in the world. And I feel really blessed to be here with you, to be really now part of that retreat. And yeah, invite everyone to follow you and check on your work and come and join us in that retreat. That will be delightful. So thank you again.
Thank you, Monica.
And we will be for sure connected.
I do.
And
I look,
yes, yes, yes. And we will post everything about your website and everything so people can have it if they didn't get it. And yeah, we will be together in this journey for sure.
I look forward to it very much. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you here today.
Thank you. And bye, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Happy Sunday. Bye bye.